Hand cannons are, by far, my favourite weapons to use in Destiny. Having been both my first pick from the gunsmith of day 1 of D1, and also my first exotic, the last word, though these days I won't be caught using it. So, because of my nearly 10 years worth of experience with them, I want to rank all current legendary hand cannons in D2. So by current, I mean no sunset and no exotic, just legendary that you can still acquire. Hand cannons have two current PVE uses as far as I'm aware, ad clear and champion chunking, thanks to the update in Season 23. Like my other lists, I'll rank them based on how effective they are at their job and if their perks offer them a specific job, like for example, Judgment having Demo Osmosis makes it more effective for a Void build than some Void hand cannons. I also want to quickly explain the differences between the frames of hand cannons. 120 RPM means it's an aggressive frame. They shoot harder than the rest, but it means it's generally slower in all other aspects. However, thanks to the Season 23 update, aggressive frames can now reload at a close to regular speed. 140 RPM means it's an adaptive frame, the baseline for hand cannons. Completely average in terms of stat distribution compared to other frames, but that doesn't make it a bad thing. Adaptive frames are generally the most popular options amongst players, think Fatebringer, Zaldi's Bane or Palindrome. There is currently only one 150 RPM legendary hand cannon in the game, and that would be Rose, which at this moment in time isn't actually obtainable. 150 means lightweight. It's nearly identical to adaptive stat distribution, but you can move faster while using it. Heavy Burst is the newest frame to be added to the game, with an RPM of 257. It has such a strange RPM because it actually fires a burst of 2 rounds. There's currently only one of these in the game as of Season 23, that being the reintroduction of Warden's Law. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's start going through them all. We're starting off our list here with Loud Lullaby, which I've ranked only mid. This 120 used to have a much better role than it does today, but it's still not terrible. Subsistence Frenzy is a great role for basically any weapon at the moment, and when it's realistically the best role you can get, it's just not that ideal. In the left column, I can only recommend Subsistence, and in the right column I'd suggest Explosive Rounds, Frenzy, or Adrenaline Junkie. Explosive Rounds can give this hand cannon unlimited range, Adrenaline can give a damage buff up to 33%, and Frenzy gives a bump of 50 reload and 15% damage. While it's not the highest damage bump, the reload bump Frenzy gives is really helpful on a 120, where reloads are still slow as hell. Judgment, I've rated as great. This 140 is slept on too much, I swear. It's so useful for build crafting, it's unreal. It's even free to play, which very few good build weapons actually are. Demo in the first column for quicker grenade regen and on the fly reloads, in the right column Time Polo for better range and damage, Adrenaline Junkie for pure grenade builds and Osmosis for Void class builds, letting you take full advantage of volatile builds. Vulpecula, I've given this bad. I want to love this 180 more than it actually deserves. It was the very first stasis hand cannon, in fact I'm fairly sure it was the first non-exotic stasis primary weapon in the game. So why shouldn't I want to love it? Well, here's why. It thoroughly sucks. Outlaw Headstone? That's it really, unless you want to run Explosive, but personally I'd rather run Eyes Luna. Eyes Luna? Great. We are so lucky that this came out the same season as Vulpecula. It's living proof that Bungie still knew how to make a great hand cannon. The second dungeon weapon already, this one coming from the 30th anniversary. Eyes Luna comes with a near perfect perk set. In the left column, I suggest Rapid Hit or Outlaw, and in the right column, I'd go with Headstone, Demo, or Kill Clip. I'd also like to bring up my personal favourite role of Unrelenting Headstone, meaning that if you can kill enemies quick enough, you heal 80 HP from Unrelenting. Then with Headstone, you can easily ad clear groups of enemies in less than 2 seconds, meaning that you can ad clear super easy and heal while you do. Cantata 57. Mid. It breaks my heart to say this, but Cantata kind of sucks. I can't tell if it's been power crept or if it just came out of the gates dead. But honestly, I'd only use this hand cannon if I had to. I'd only suggest Rapid Hit Time Payload. Not really much to say on this one, to be honest. Crisis Inverted. Now talk about slept on, this hand cannon has honestly not got the best stats and a wide as hell perk pool, but if you can get a good roll on this, I promise you'll love it. Even has a demo in the first column, a rare trait for a primary. Speaking of left column, Outlaw, stats for all, Demo and Rapid Hit. Then in the right column there's Focus Fury, Adrenaline, Kill Clip and One for All. This 140 is just like an ARC version of Judgment, but it's way harder to get realistically since the perk pool is so wide. 12 perks in each column is just ridiculous. Ostringer, great. This is definitely my bias speaking here, but this 140 is my highest level crafted weapon, so you have to trust me when I say this thing feels great. I'm only going to suggest 2 roles for this thing, Outlaw and Rampage, or Frenzy. Rampage can give a higher damage buff, but it requires you to be able to kill whatever you're shooting at, and Frenzy is a 15% damage boost and reload boost, but it doesn't require you to kill anything. just be in combat for 12 seconds. These are really basic rolls, but trust me when I say this, it feels so good to use, it's nearly unmatched. Pure Poetry, mid. I hate saying this, because Pure Poetry has got some great rolls on it, but it just doesn't feel up to snuff. With perks like Outlaw and Ambitious Assassin in the left column, and Swash, Frenzy and Rampage in the right column, it certainly isn't from lack of choice that makes this hand cannon feel off. If I'm honest, I think it's the reload speed and stability that hurt this hand cannon the most. Sure, Frenzy could help with it, but when you have to sift through 11 other perks in that column alone, it's just not worth the effort really. Rose, bad. The only lightweight hand cannon in the game currently, and you can't even get it. That alone should make this bad, but even then, it's just not made for PvE. The only PvE role is rapid hit explosive payload, and if I'm honest, the only good thing this hand cannon has going for it now is how it looks. Round Robin, good. I've recently fallen in love with this hand cannon, even though it's actually not that great, but it does feel a niche that no other hand cannon can fill. It's Strand with Hatchling, so it's invaluable on Strand Warlock if you're fixed on hand cannons. Even then, if not Hatchling, then you can use Tricorn with Strand Titan or Warlock. Since the melees are so plentiful and powerful, you can proc the 50% damage bonus on Tricorn easily. In the left column, you can take your pick between Envious and Subsistence. Realistically, it's just the player's choice between the two. Spare Rations, good. Most hand cannons can get away with only one good reload perk, and then a selection of damage perks in the right column. And this is a good example of this. Spare Rations can get rapid hit in the first column, and then a few really good choices in the right hand column. Focus Fury, Vorpal and Kinetic Tremors for endgame and champions, Kill Clip and Swash for more mid-game content like strikes. It might be because I have a super soft spot for this weapon, but I do really enjoy using this one. Probably more than I should admit, to be fair. Kept Confidence, mid. Oh, what could have been with this one? Kept Confidence is the first Strand 140, meaning that if it had the right perks, I don't know if I would have stopped using it. But, unfortunately, as it almost always goes for seasonal weapons, this fell off very quickly. The only role I can reasonably recommend is Stats for All and Multi-Kill Clip, and if I'm ever recommending Multi-Kill Clip, then you know it's a trash weapon. The only saving grace for this 140 is how good it feels to use, really, not much else. Borden's Law, mid. Another heartbreak of a weapon. I wanted this to be great so badly. Unfortunately, it's just not. Maybe it's the growing pains of a new frame or the bizarre perks on it. Either way, this particular heavy burst just isn't doing it for me right now. I can only really suggest Enlightened Action for mid-game in the left column with Rampage, Frenzy or Kill Clip in the right column. It does have a seemingly good anti-champion roll of 4 times in Vorpal, which does sound fun to use. Hopefully we'll get another heavy burst with some more entertaining rolls on it in the future. Malediction, good. This is actually a very good hand cannon. I truly wasn't expecting it to be, but it is fun. Especially for new lights who might not be able to get a good hand cannon early on. Enlightened Action requires dealing damage to proc, and Explosive Payload has seemingly infinite range. Plus the new origin trait for this foundry can make small landmines that will proc Enlightened Action. Just an all-round fun weapon to use. Word of Crota, great. Now this thing is special. The Word of Crota is one of, if not the, best hand cannon in the energy slot. In the left slot, let's go with Repulsor Brace, Enlightened Action and Demo. Then in the right column, let's go with any of them. That's right, every perk in the right hand column is viable in PvE. Focus Fury and Precision Instrument are GM viable, Frenzy, Rampage and Adrenaline Junkie and Sword Logic are all viable from raids to dungeons to strikes. Now here's the real special role of this weapon. Repulsor Brace and Destabilizing Rounds. You kill something, everything around it becomes volatile. You kill one of those nearby enemies, and now thanks to Repulsor you have an overshield. Mix this roll with Gerfalcon's build, and you're now finishing the race in first place. It really has no equal in terms of viability in different content. The only downside is how difficult it is to acquire, but for what it is, I'd say it's more than justified that this is the true endgame loot. Annual Skate, mid. This thing has been power crept so badly, but at least it's still better than its newer brother Cantato, because it has more than one good role. Outlaw in the first column, then Timed Payload, Dragonfly or Swash. Sure, it sounds fun, but you can definitely get better options on newer and easier to acquire weapons. Waking Vigil. The same case as Annual Skate really, but it's easier to get at least. Rapid Hit or Outlaw in the left column with Dragonfly and Kill Clip in the right. Not much else to say really besides how good it looks. Criminal's Dagger. Bad. Sure, Outlaw Kill Clip is a time-tested perk set that has rarely gone wrong. But when it's on an Iron Banner weapon, which isn't the easiest in the world to get, it's really not worth the price to get it. Plus, it's an aggressive frame, so you could get Loud Lullaby from the moon if you're really desperate. Not to mention, you can't even get this anymore, so definitely go for Loud Lullaby over this. Ancient Gospel. Bad. Surely a 140 raid weapon should be good, right? Well, you'd be surprised. This thing is endgame loot for some reason only God knows. Sure, it's got some good rolls, Rapid Hit, Outlaw and Kill Clip, Swash, Dragonfly, but Waking Vigil gets these exact rolls and it's both easier to get and Arc, so it can still work with Arc 3.0. Unlike most solar weapons. Under no circumstances can I suggest grinding for this. 7th Seraph Officer Revolver. Good. This really surprised me. I really expected this to be bad, since the last time I used it, it was. But since the Season 23 Champion update to hand cannons, this one is genuinely useful. Reconstruction, or 4th times with Vorpal, is really helpful against champions, especially since hand cannons are in the artifact this season. Just to be extra clear, I'm not talking about the old one from Season of the Worthy, because that still sucks balls. Posterity. Great. Speaking of glow-ups, this 180 is another example of endgame loot feeling endgame. Almost like the Arc version of Word of Crota, Posterity is leaps and bounds the best Arc hand cannon in the game at the moment. In my opinion, of course. Sure, you could just have Rapid Hit or Reconstruction in the first column, or you can have Volt Shot, which is just crazy to me. That's so powerful, putting an Add Clear perk in the left column like that. Then, in the right column, I'd suggest Frenzy to go with Volt Shot to give it that damage and reload buff. It would need to compete against special weapons that might otherwise be able to add clear it. Forbearance, for example. Fatebringer, great. My personal favourite weapon in the entire game, bar none. Sure, it's been slightly power crept in the 2 years since it came out, but nothing can compete with just how perfect it feels to use. Explosive Payload and Firefly is just perfect to me, nothing can compete. Enough of me gushing. If you want another roll, there's Rewind Rounds, which is just a fun perk to use, and Osmosis for grenade builds too, like Volatile. In the right column, there's Kill Clip and Frenzy, or even Firefly, which is like Dragonfly, but it also reloads quickly on top of it. Sure, it can't really be used to build a loadout around, quite like the other raid weapons in this list, but it sure can fill any kinetic primary gaps any loadout has, easily. Die Promise, bad. This is a PvP weapon, through and through. Overflow and Swash, there you go, the only PvE roll really. Use Osmosis if you really want to, but personally I wouldn't use this one at all, to be fair. True Prophecy, good. Same as Dire Promise, but it has some better PvE perks in the right column. Overflow with Time Payload, Explosive Rounds, Rampage, or even Demo. It just goes to show that a few more good perks in PvE can raise his hand cannon from bad to good. Icolos Hand Cannon, mid. We're talking about the most recent iteration of this 180, don't want to get confused with the older, worse versions. But in saying that, this version ain't great either. It does get good rolls, don't get me wrong, but it's the weapon itself that lets it down. I'm not even really going to go into its perks, just trust me when I say it's not that useful and it's not that easy to get. Nature of the Beast, bad. Subsistence and Dragonfly or Demo. There you go, that's all. This is your primary, like, good luck. The Steady Hand, mid. This was actually my main primary before I got my Fatebringer, so it hurts to say that this is mid, but it really is for PvE. Outlaw and Swash is really all I can recommend here, but I used to use Outlaw and Wellspring, and it got me on fine, so really all it needs is that reload perk and you should be alright with this thing. Igneous Hammer, great. This is surprising. A Trials weapon getting great for PvE. It is deserved though. Rapid Hit is always a good pick on hand cannons, and the new solar perk, Heal Clip, is a great choice too, to keep your health up without any external means. Then, Incandescent and Frenzy are great picks, and Tricorn is great for certain solar builds like Sunbracer Warlock, Bonk, Solar Titan, and Infinite Throwing Knife or Trip Mine Hunter. And strangely enough, thanks to the new trial system, where winds can give you weapons now too, Ignis is likely easier to acquire than other solar options. The Palindrome, good. I've never understood the hype around this hand cannon. It doesn't have the best damage perks in the world, only really having one for all, but it does have Outlaw, Stats for all, and Overflow. But, since it is a Nightfall weapon, it will be brought back soon with an updated perk list. And since it's Void, hopefully some Void specific perks to make it a good buildcraft weapon. Bottom dollar. Good. This is like if Pure Poetry had better stats where it mattered. It's got the standard perk choices like Outlaw, Rampage, Explosive Payload, and even Feeding Frenzy, which is a more rare pick for hand cannons. It does still have 12 perks in both columns, but since it has a few more good perks to choose, it ultimately makes finding a good roll of this hand cannon that little bit easier. Survivor's Epitaph, mid. This Crucible 180 is just plain boring. It's good, yeah, but it's not exactly exciting. If you've got a good role, like Outlaw Frenzy, or Feeding Frenzy Kill Clip, or Ambitious Assassin One For All, then it's pretty good. But those perks can be found on other hand cannons, with better stats, easier to obtain with said perks, and honestly a better frame. I'm just not a fan of 180s unless they do something special, which this hand cannon just doesn't. Finite Impactor. Bad. Stats for a One For All isn't that special of a PVE role for a weapon, as exclusive as an Iron Banner weapon. Just overall not one for PVE. Something new. Good. Essentially the free-to-play version of Eyes Luna, just a different frame and without Unrelenting. But it can get Pugilist in the left column, making it good for Stasis Hunters if you want to mix it with Headstone. Feeding, Frenzy and Rapid Hit in the left column are good reload perks to choose too. Kill Clip, Frenzy and even Tricorn are good damage perks in the right column. Fun little perk set here is Pugilist and Demo, meaning that you can have a really good ability uptime with this selection, and you shouldn't need to worry about reloading too much since Demo can handle that. DFA. Good. Another standard kinetic option for newcomers, definitely doesn't deserve to be a Nightfall weapon with kind of boring perks like this. Outlaw, Rampage or Time Payload is my suggestion here. Hopefully when this gets reissued it gains Kinetic Tremors or some other fun perk to make this feel more unique. Maybe Overflow Kinetic Tremors? Frontier's Cry. Bad. The same as the other Iron Banner hand cannons. This thing kinda sucks. Boring perk selection and it looks ugly as hell. It is kinda funny though. Zowli's Bane. Great. I have heard no end about how great this hand cannon is. And honestly, I get it. This is great for any solo build, with Explosive Incandescent making a great perk sec for most solo builds, but in the left column there isn't much else. Pugilist would only work with Firefly, since Zowli has a surprisingly slow reload. So, until another solo 140 shows up, Zowli's Bane remains the top dog. But don't get me wrong, it won't be hard to replace it. Exalted Truth. Good. This one is kinda in between Word of Crota and Icolos when it comes to Void hand cannons. It's not quite build craftable, like Word of Crota is, but it has better stats, frame and perks than Icolos. Honestly, even if you would just use this thing like a bog standard primary with Outlaw Rampage, I couldn't blame you. But I would like it if this came with destabilizing rounds, but with Repulsor Brace and Falcons you can still get some good moment to moment play going. It's just not as good as Word of Crota. Trust. Good. This would be great if it wasn't for the insane amount of perks on this thing. Its ease to get makes it a great early to mid game solo primary with Outlaw or Rapid Hit with Incandescent or Tricorn. It really is a shame all these ritual weapons have so many perks on them. I get it's to extend playtime, but when it's in Gambit it's a little unfair to make you play it so much. Epochal Integration. Good. It's like if Trust was in a better frame, had guaranteed perks and was easier to get, but Trust is free to play, which puts it a rung above Epochal. Plus, it's just a little boring considering how much hype there was about it before they finally decided to release it. Targeted Redaction. Good. Exalted Truth, but with worse stats and a different frame. That doesn't make this bad, it just means realistically there's only one role to go after on this, which is Outlaw Destabilizing Rounds, since every other perk selection can be found on better weapons. But, since this is craftable, I can see why you'd want a different selection of perks on this thing, though personally I don't think I'd bother. Combined Action. Mid. Just use Eddy Current and Volt Shot. It's practically given to you for the Arc subclass quest. If you want a Volt Shot primary without doing a raid, you're better off checking in with a Gunsmith or Zerg for a primary from Season of the Plunder, that Scout Rifle or that Sidearm really. Nation of Beasts. Great. This has grown on me, I can't lie. For a long time everyone called this thing's D2's Fatebringer, and that just left a bad taste in my mouth for this thing, for whatever reason. So, when I ran the updated version of The Last Wish and got a better version of Nation of Beasts, I was surprised. It was actually good. The Dragonfly Explosive Rounds roll still felt a bit like a homemade Fatebringer, don't get me wrong, but Dragonfly Volt Shot seems like a really good, fun roll to use. It's not as helpful as Posterity, since Volt Shot rolls in the second column there, but it doesn't make Nation any less fun for it. If I had to select a few as the best of the best from every weapon I've gone over, then I'd choose the following. Word of Crota. The best Void hand cannon in the game, possibly the best Void primary in the game. Word of Crota, in my eyes, has no equal, and I really don't think I could replace it out of my loadout at this point. Fatebringer. I really don't have to explain this decision, do I? Fatebringer is iconic to any Destiny veteran for good reason. Fatebringer is by far the best kinetic primary in my opinion. Ars Luna. The same situation as Fatebringer, honestly, just stasis this time around. It's nearly irreplaceable in any loadout you find it in. It also has the ability to rapidly heal its user, which not many of the hand cannons can actually do. Judgment. This is here honestly just for the build crafting you can do around this thing. Demo in the first column makes this thing so useful for nearly any build, especially on Warlock. I mean, I've been using mine on and off since I've gotten it. Spare rations. This is really only here because of its unique perk, kinetic tremors. That alone makes this thing worth picking up for now. I'm also making a special note of spare rations because I think it's unfairly hated, since this older version used to have a much better roll than the current one. But I think that's entirely unfair when this version is still very fun. I'm sure in the future there'll be more hand cannons with tremors rolling on them, but for now, it makes spare rations a uniquely rare weapon. Posterity. This is just like Word quotes it to me. I just wish I had the God Roll of this to be able to use it all the time. Not to mention an add clear arc weapon these days is a little redundant if you have forbearance, but it is a great primary to take its place if you don't have forbearance yet. You might have noticed that there is neither a 120, a solar, or a strand weapon in my special mentions. That's because I don't think any of them stand out, so here's my suggestions to fill those gaps. A status 120 with perks like Demo, Headstone, or Outlaw Tricorn. A strand heavy burst with perks like Unrelenting, Hatchling, or Pugilist Focus Fury. A solar 150 with perks like Healed Clip, Firefly, or Reconstruction Incandescent. These are a little unrealistic, but honestly I'd like to see these put into the game, especially more 150s and heavy bursts. Conclusively, I'd say whilst there aren't that many good hand cannons in the game compared to other primaries, they've got some of the best choices in my opinion if you can get a good roll. I hope this guide helps you pick some of the coolest weapons in the game.